It was really different to work in bilingual education in Philadelphia, where all of these things were going on. But I had the wonderful privilege of watching this extraordinary teacher who was from Nicaragua, who had lived and fought in the Nicaraguan Sandinista revolution. So she was at heart a deeply revolutionary spirit. And she was teaching middle school bilingual education, which I'd never heard of. I knew it was through elementary, but I didn't know you could even have middle school bilingual. And she taught Puerto Rican literature, and just no subject was untouched. And she was very effective. And it was a joy to write a dissertation by living in her world and becoming como familia, like family, with her students. It was really, really a wonderful experience. And then I moved down here, and there was no such thing as bilingual education. And I got to teach this class that was on the books, the one you're taking now. But how could I teach people who'd never seen it or even read about it? It didn't exist. And we didn't have the kind of internet that we have now to even be able to, see the videos with easy access. There was nothing. So I talked a good game. And I guess it was good enough because Dell was like, by gosh, darn it, I'm going to make it happen in Georgia.
Yeah.
So you are talking to a revolutionary. So you take it away and you end when you need to end, and around
Okay.
H would be good.
Okay, that's what I'm going to aim for.
Okay.
So Misha said, her experience of going somewhere in California and having this experience with bilingual education and saying, where has this been all my life kind of experience. That's how I felt when I was in this class in 2000 something, 3 maybe, 2000, yeah, early 2000s. And I'm from Texas. I grew up in Texas, and how could I not know about this type of education? And so that was my first semester in my doctoral program, and so I was only doing coursework. I was straight out of the classroom. I wasn't sure, what I was doing or why I was doing it, but I was there. And I very quickly had the realization that I belonged in schools. It didn't take me long to figure out that I belonged in schools. And so here I was, I had quit my job and I'm doing this PhD program, but I had to figure out a way to get back into schools because that's where I needed to be. And so I think I went to Misha and I said, okay, so this is what I'm thinking. And then we came up with this plan for a way for me to, still do this PhD program, but be very pragmatic about it. My goal was to get back into the classroom, get back into schools. And there were things that I needed to be able to do that. I needed to if I was going to start a bilingual school, I needed to have some administrative credentials. I needed to get that underneath my belt. And so that I was, like I started out saying, I was just in a place that I was able to mold and do a program that was very much tailor-made for me. And I think that I'm not the only person who had that experience. And I hope people are still having that experience in this department at UGA, because it's not always that way. I know that from talking with other folks who were there at the same time as I was. So I've read through all the questions and I'm going to answer or kind of weave in and out of them. I did my thing. I went and color coded them to kind of categorize. That's just kind of the way that I operate, the way my mind works. So I've kind of got topics that I'll talk about in kind of an order that I'll go through, but then feel free to interject at any point in time. But I'm going to kind of continue this vein of my dissertation. So somebody asked me, and you complimented my dissertation, and I appreciate that very much. And I think about, making things accessible to people, no matter what we're doing. I wanted to be back in a school, and I wanted my story to be accessible to other people who might want to do or, have a similar type of experience. And so I felt like my decision to write it that way was just true to who I am, just sort of, that's kind of how I am, but also it made it, like you said, accessible to not just very, very high academic journals or that sort of thing. It made it accessible to people like me who might want to follow a similar path or might be considering something like this. So that's sort of how I arrived, I think, at this type of dissertation, and it just felt good to me. And somebody asked, like, how did I come up with the idea? Misha, do you have any idea? I don't remember how I came up with the idea to write it in the interview format with Dewey. You remember?
Yes, I do.
What?
Because you weren't going to finish she's having a little block in memory, but she was not going to write her dissertation. She'd started the school, and you were like, and I was like, you are not going to write this dissertation. And it was, part of it was the burden of a theoretical framework. And I am an arts-based scholar, and I advocate for decolonizing intellectual work, as you said so beautifully. And I was listening. I think I would like to take a little credit for planting the seed, only because I'm a podcast junkie. And I think you were also listening to Terry Gross at the time. And it was like, well, let's just do it. It was totally unheard of, but you ran with it. And also you went away to the mountains for like a week and wrote that dissertation in a week. I won't say it was only a week because there was much that went into it beforehand, but it was like poured out of you. And I'm so glad.
Yes. And I did have a very wonderful writing group that I worked with. I don't know if any of you are going down this path or not, but I had a very a writing group that we really supported each other, and we met frequently, and we worked together, and that was really very helpful in this process too.
Who was it? Was it anyone in our program?
Michelle Zoss and Corey. Do you remember Corey? I can't think of her last name right now.
Yeah, she's somewhere wonderful.
Yeah,
good.
And then one friend who was in the College of Education in a different, like in an admin in a different college area in the College of Education, and he was not having the same experience that I was, and so that's what I was. One of the people that I was saying that it's not always that way.
I'm going to ask Evie, or I think Jill maybe is in that group with, or is it Claire who's in the group with Abdu? If you have his text, tell him he should get his butt in the Zoom because he's getting his PhD. He'll be so inspired.
I will. I'll send
Sorry. So, and then somebody asked about, well, the whole learning through doing, that sort of thing. Again, that's just my it all works together. The whole reflective practice and autoethnography and learning through it all is intertwined. But it's also just it's very pragmatic too. I mean, you do something, you see how it's going, you reflect on it, you make it better, but it's all about action, right? And I'm, like I said, I need to be doing in the schools. I'm not the theoretical person, I'm the action person. And so that's kind of just where it's just how I conduct myself and my life in general. So from there, I'm going to kind of just go into some of the practicalities, and a lot of the questions about sort of dual language immersion some were very specific, like, well, do you teach phonics or not? And how do you decide which language you're going to use? And almost the answer to almost every single one of those questions is you have to do what's right in the place and the time that you are with the people that you've got. I mean, there are programs and there are formulas, But if anything is going to work, you're going to have to tailor it and make it work for where you are when you're there. And so depending on the type of model that you adopt and the type of bilingual education that you're doing and the goals of that bilingual education, that will determine how much English are you using, how much other language are you using. Is it all speakers of one language? Is it a balance of speakers? All of those things make it, are going to depend on where you are when you're doing your thing. In Texas, we have a lot of one-way immersion schools. And that's because we have instead of two-way immersion, we have a lot of one-way immersion schools. And that's because we do have large communities of people in the same school who all speak the same native language. And so we will have schools that just have one-way bilingual programs. So it's for Spanish speakers, native Spanish speakers only. And the goal is for them to be bilingual. So it will start in all Spanish, 100% Spanish, and then gradually move to maybe a 50-50 model. So we do have a lot of schools in Texas that are one-way immersion programs. And then we have other schools, because of the populations there, that are two-way immersion schools that will have ideally a balance of students who are, in Texas, it's mostly Spanish and English, native English speakers and native Spanish speakers. And then my experience in Georgia was a two-way program, but we had more native English speakers than we had native Spanish speakers in the program. And it can work. It's just, you've got to figure out your balances and where you're going to give and where you're going to take with the languages. Somebody asked about, well, how do you maintain or prioritize the languages, or what's the best practices for that? And again, depending on who you talk to, you're going to get different answers. For me, it was always important that if we said that math was going to be in Spanish, then math was going to be in Spanish, and we didn't mix the languages much. Sometimes you use another language, just like with ESL, English as a second language, you'll use a first language to get a point across, but work on building that additional language. But it wasn't just haphazard. It was very programmatic about, there's going to be English during this time and Spanish during this time. And if we ever erred on to have more of one language than the other, it was always going to be erring in the direction of the minority language, the language that wasn't spoken in the community. But again, all decisions are made sort of based on the goals of what you're after. And even in bilingual programs, the goals are different. So are there any other questions just about sort of the logistics of operating that, or how that works in a classroom that I didn't address yet? Okay. Then the next sort of group of questions was about the bureaucracy and the politics of it. And I wish I could say things were better, but I don't feel like in our world today that things are any better. There's always bureaucracy and always politics associated with every decision that is made. I live in a small town in Texas now, and I work in a school district, in a district role. But I'm saddened, honestly, at how often I have to bite my tongue, or I have to temper what I say because of the politics and around me. And I am in small town Texas again. That's where I am. If I were in Austin, it wouldn't be as bad, but I'm not. And so it just is what it is. So I think that you learn how to sort of, or I have learned, I'm working on still sort of sitting back and showing again through my actions, doing the thing, and then letting people, not going, oh, I told you so, but kind of saying, I told you so, letting people sort of see that this can work, and we just got to sort of sneak it in, which I don't like having to do it that way, and it shouldn't have to be that way, but sometimes that's just how things are. Now, I will say, in terms of bilingual education here in Texas, it is, you don't have to sneak it in. It is the preferred way to educate here in Texas. And there are statutes that say if any school at any particular grade level has 20 or more students with the same language, you are required to offer bilingual education. So 20 or more students at the same grade level in the same language, you're required to offer bilingual education. At the school where I am, we don't have that, so I don't get to do it. Or the district where I am, we don't get to do that. But it's there, and the push again is toward bilingual education. There was a change in language over the summer. The student in English, so the language has evolved. It used to be LEP, limited English proficient. That's still the federal terminology, but English learners were limited English proficient, LEP. And then they were English language learners. And then they became English learners. In Texas this summer, everyone became an emergent bilingual. So there is that, you see that shift and sort of moving along that continuum. And I don't think, somebody said they recognized I'm a cynic. I don't remember who that was, but yes, I'm a cynic. I wish I could say that it's because we, recognize the value of bilingual education and we want, everybody, it's because it is, popular for those in power. They recognize that it is good, and so now they're sort of legitimizing it by making it more accessible and more funding. Schools get more funding for offering bilingual education as opposed to ESL, as opposed to nothing. So the money is following the programming here in Texas. So again, the politics and the bureaucracy, it's there. You just have to sort of figure out how to work around it and kind of sneak around it, sneak it in, and then just model. Be a model for what you want to do, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time to even see any headway in that way, but it does happen. There were a number of questions about sort of achievements and challenges. The challenges, the politics and the bureaucracy, and was a challenge then. The money is a challenge because but I think it all goes back to educating and understanding, people understanding what you're trying to do. And if that can never get accomplished, to have people understand it like it is here, then I think that it becomes a whole lot easier. But when I was starting the school, the biggest challenge was nobody knew what I was talking about. I didn't have any models to point them toward in Georgia. Well, I take that back. There was a private school, and still is, as far as I know, a private school that I think, is it the Atlanta International School, that was doing bilingual education. But there weren't any public schools doing it at the time in Georgia. There were in North Carolina, in Charlotte, I think was the closest that I found. But I wasn't able to get access into those to even see or get information from them. And certainly a state leader or a board member was not going to go out of their way to try to go and see those programs. So when I was doing this a long time ago, the biggest challenge was people just didn't know what I was talking about, and I had to convince them to trust me. That is, I don't think, the case anymore. I think that there are a lot of schools now. Is that right, Misha? Yeah.
Over 50.
Yeah.
But when you were taking this class, we read an article, which I no longer assign, from a work done by Rebecca Freeman at that school in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And you flew.
Yeah, I was there for a conference that had nothing to do with what I was doing. And I was walking around the neighborhood where the conference was being held, and I turned a corner and there was Oyster School. It was like, Oyster what? Elementary. Like I was in shock. It was like seeing a star that I had been hearing about my whole life, and there they were in front of me, and I didn't know what to say or do, but I went in and I told them, I said, I'm here just for a day, and can I please come see your school? And they let me. They let me come in and see it. And so I don't remember what the conference was about, but that was the highlight of my trip.
Anthropology.
That's what it was.
Anthropology Association. I know, because I remember making you go.
So something great came out of it, no matter what, something great came out of it. So that was actually the only place that I got to see the bilingual program in action. The rest was me reading and studying about it and that sort of thing. And it was all theory. It was all theory until we opened our doors. And then we got to sort of turn that theory into practice. The other biggest challenge had to do with sort of local policies in terms of teachers, finding teachers. At the time, there were no bilingual education teacher certification programs in Georgia. I don't know if there are any now.
There are, and very few, but Georgia State has the only one. And that's an embarrassment that we don't have anything like that.
Yeah. So that was a huge challenge. And so we would have opportunities through contacts, basically, to find teachers internationally. But then there was bureaucracy associated with getting their visas so that they could teach here. And nobody was willing to just take a chance. Like, I promise it'll be worth it if you'll just let me do this H1 visa, or, whatever the J1 or whatever the visa was at the time. So that was huge. Finding teachers to teach in the programs was really, really tough. So, and even in Texas, it's still tough to find bilingual teachers. We do have all of the major schools have bilingual certification programs, and so there are more opportunities for it, but it's still, honestly, it's hard to find teachers in general right now. Teachers are hard to come by and hard to keep, and I don't blame them. It's a tough profession to be in right now. So those were some of the biggest challenges. In terms of achievements, the kids are the greatest achievement. So Misha, you know what I went to do, right? I went to get my tissue because they're the whole reason that you do something like this, right? And so I don't keep up with all the families anymore, but I do keep up with some of them, or they'll send me updates and that sort of thing. And they're just doing amazing things. These kids are doing amazing things, both kids who started as native English speakers or those who started as native Spanish speakers. They're doing amazing things, and their parents are just so proud of them too. And I always talk about this one student because she's like, we were friends on Facebook, and we chat and we message and we do things, and we share our birthday. Our birthday is the same day. And she started in kindergarten, and she was our first class of kindergartners. The year that we started kindergarten and first grade. So we celebrated our birthdays together from kindergarten through 8th grade. Every year we would go into my office and I would get cupcakes, and we would have our birthday together. She and one other student that I have lost touch with, but the three of us, for every year, kindergarten through 8th grade, we celebrated our birthdays together. And she's now a junior. She's a junior at Howard University. I mean, she's doing amazing things. And I think about her family and the risks that they took to put her in the school, because they trusted me when I said, I'm going to teach her in Spanish, but she's going to learn English, I promise you. And they didn't know that, but they trusted me. And she did. And she's doing amazing things. And so are all the others. Well, not all the others, but a lot of the others. And so my greatest accomplishment, I think, was gaining that trust of that community, and then watching those kids, continue. So in the end, it's worth it. It was hell. It was hell. I did not have a good time doing any of this. Well, most of it. I didn't have a good time doing most of it. People have asked me, would you do it again? And I say no. Do I recommend it? No. It's not easy work. Could it have been different in a different place? Possibly. I was in a community and in a district that is just a tough place to work in general. And so I think I got a lot. In fact, I know I got a lot more accolades outside of where I worked than I did within the school district where I was. And anyway, I think it could have been different in other places. And I think it would be different today.
And just to add, so the next iteration of student after the school opened in 2006, another student took this class and said, yeah, why don't we have this in Hull County? Like we've got the population. So Carrie Woodcock talked, had a new superintendent that came to the Hull County or Gainesville City Schools. I can't remember. I know that's like kind of
Hull County.
Hull County. And the superintendent had just been recruited from Michigan, I think it was, where he was a real advocate. He knew what dual language was. It wasn't a hard sell at all. Unlike Dell's experience, she, this superintendent was pro and really wanted it to happen. And everything was much more smooth sailing, more resources. There was a competitive lottery. The non-Spanish speaking families were fighting to get in. There was, unlike your school bus support. Right. There was, money. There was more higher income populations in that area. And it's still thriving and growing and expanding in that county. And I think they have a high school now. I think it goes all K-12. So
if they started when I did, they would have at least the students for that now.
So it's, and that it's a 45 or 60-minute drive from Athens, and really worth checking out the World Language Academy and the partner elementary and probably now high school. And, I don't think that school would exist had your school not existed, for her to see it visit, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, because they brought their whole school board down to do tours and all that kind of stuff. No other administrators from any other school in the county where I was ever came to visit my school, but people from everywhere else did. It was very bizarre. Now that I look back on it, it was very, very bizarre. But that kind of leads me to my last bit of questions, and that is like the current status. And the current status is, y'all, I don't know. I don't know. I left the school in 2014. I left. And so I was there for 8 years. And then I moved back to Texas. And I don't know. I don't like to know what's going on because it didn't go the way that I wanted it to when I left. And so, and it's also not helpful, I think, for somebody to live in the shadows of another person. And so I kind of stepped back from it so that the school could do its thing without me. And they did some things that I would not have done. And so I kind of removed myself from it. And so honestly, I don't know. It's kind of like this sickening feeling in my stomach, like thinking about it, like this child that I abandoned. But I don't know how it's doing. And Misha bugged me for years to write, part 2. And for a little while I entertained it and sort of half-heartedly. But it's sort of like I can't get back into that space. It's totally not my school anymore. I don't know what, if anything, it has to do with my original vision. I sometimes wonder, do they even know that I started this school? Does anyone even know that? And I think I don't want to know the answer. I think I could walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Dell Giles," and they'd say, "Oh, and you are," and that wouldn't feel good. So I kind of just I removed myself from it. So a lot of the questions were, tell us about it now. What's happening now? I don't know. I don't know what's happening now. That group of kids is all graduated now, that group that I was the closest with. So because it only went up to 8th grade. And it still, as far as I know, only goes up to 8th grade. And so after 8th grade, the students would go to their high schools or wherever they were going to go. So the kids that I was, the closest with and spent the most years with, they're all gone now. So, Misha, is there anything that I didn't cover that you would want me to cover, or any kind of burning questions that, maybe I skipped over?
I think this is a great time to just open it up and, feel free to unmute. I thank you. She says, before you all got on, she was like, I must be your most, steady speaker. Every year I ask, and I have, that's why I'm recording this, because every year I go, maybe this is the year she's going to say no. Maybe this is the year when her son is going to have soccer, and I pick the night and the time when she can come. I make it, whatever you could do. And it always is lucky when students come. So Sarah and Abdu, I'm sorry for harassing you, but I'm like, this is really talking to a change maker. It's not all the time that you have somebody making courageous new change in your lifetime. And you did that. You took an idea that sounded pretty good, that was successful elsewhere, and you followed it through. And I didn't know you were going to make it. One time early in her career, she called me in a panic because Fox News called and it wanted to interview her or debate her.
They wanted to debate. They wanted to put me in a debate against somebody that was like this professional debater. And I'm like,
English only, it was an English only, trained debater. And they wanted her on Fox News to debate. And she calls me, would I help her? So I called the debate coach at UGA, and I'm planning, and I'm trying to get my cool, and I'm going to go on the Fox with her, and we're going to do this thing. And then something came up that was even more interesting.
It was a bigger story. It was a bigger crisis than offering bilingual education in Georgia. It was something that was worse than that.
Something worse happened in Florida, and they changed the story, and I was so relieved.
Me too. Now that you remind me of that, I was too. I was not looking forward.
Yeah,
I would not be good in that situation.
And we're living such deeply divided political times, and you almost feel sometimes, when I teach this class, I think, when am I going to have that student who's not going to drink the Kool-Aid, like, who's not going to say bilingual education is good, who's going to be opposed to this idea? So far, I don't know. Maybe it's the title of the class. I don't know. I don't have detractors that sign up, at least that out themselves. I think
I've had them in my classes that
I've taught. I mean, in this class, they're in other classes.
Not in this class.
Not in this class. So, but Abdu is considering, or is in a dissertation program. I maybe some of you others will be compelled. I think Elizabeth maybe also. I'm not sure. Certainly many languages, many abilities in this room, from Portuguese and German and Greek, and I don't remember if it's Swahili or some other language that, Elizabeth, that you speak. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say one other thing. I was looking back at my notes. Somebody asked me about like policies and that sort of thing that can get in the way too. Another big one that I remember, and it's kind of fallen from my radar, is the whole testing thing, the whole state assessment systems. And because in Georgia, is at the time I was there, everything was tested in English. Everyone was tested in English, and that was the only option. And so that was another big leap of faith for anybody, for me to tell the board members, we're going to teach them in Spanish, but I promise you they're going to, with time, do okay on these English standardized assessments. So that was another big hurdle, and people never give you the time that you need for these kinds of things. But again, in Texas, students are tested in the language in which they'll do best. Teachers make those decisions. So if they're in a bilingual program and the teacher individually makes those assessment decisions, is this child going to take their assessment in English, or are they going to take their assessment in Spanish? And so so that you are truly measuring what a student knows as opposed to just their language ability. So even that's evolving. There's hope for that. I mean, there are places that it's done differently, even if it's not in Georgia yet, and I don't know if it is or not. But that was another thing that I wrote down in my notes. And then I guess, is it Abdu? Is that the right name? Who is considering doing the program in Morocco? And what recommendations would I have for you? I think that you have to, from the very beginning, really know why you're doing what you're doing, and really define why you're doing what you're doing, whatever it is. And then all the decisions will fall from that. But if you figure out exactly why you're doing and the reason, then all the everything else will fall into place. And it's just like if you're a school administrator and you sort of have this guiding principle that my decisions are going to be based on what's good for kids. My decisions are going to be based on what's good for kids. If this is your guiding principle, then everything else, it'll fall where it's going to fall. So I think that the first thing that you really, really have to hone in on is, why am I doing this? Is this, am I doing this because there is a population that needs this? Am I doing, and what do they need? But that would be my biggest piece of advice to you, is before you get any further along, understand and really, and then surround yourself with people with that same vision. who can help you get there. People who have different talents and different interests and different access points than you have, because you read that it's hard to do all the things yourself. But if you have other people, the most successful schools that I've seen, the ones that have the most students with the most resources, are those that have people that know different things and can have access into different just different avenues, different resources. So that's kind of what I thought about. I wrote know the why. When I read your question, I said know the why of what you're doing.
One more question related to that, please. Do you think this bilingual, I would say, approach in general would work for adults, especially that now, in Morocco it's a little bit different than here, because even native Moroccans, they have different linguistic backgrounds, where sometimes people who are not native speakers of Arabic would need to learn Arabic to be able to communicate when they move to a different environment where Arabic is used, just only Arabic. They can't speak with their local languages or L1 when they are in that environment. So, but still, people who speak Arabic don't need Amazigh sometimes, because they are in an environment when Arabic is the dominant. So if you have a bilingual education of Amazigh Arabic at the same time, it's like Amazigh people who are benefiting most of it, because Arabic people would learn Amazigh for, you could say, specific purposes, just if they are traveling or they have their companies in the area, or they have any benefits from the areas where Amazigh is spoken. So it's not a kind of 50-50 balance between Amazigh Arabic speakers. So would you consider, for example, giving or putting more emphasis on one language over the other? And how would you somehow try to balance the linguistic, the social, and the racial differences? I remember, I think I asked that question, but when it comes to adults somehow, not kids.
So let me answer this in a couple parts. One, about how do you know which language to use more? Again, you have to figure out what is your purpose. But I said earlier on, and I'm not sure that you were on here yet, we always erred, if the goal was bilingual for both language communities to have, if the goal was bilingual, to always, if there was a choice between one or the other, always choose the language that's the minority language, the one that was not the one that you were going to hear or use out as often, because it's not, this is pretty much the only place that it's going to happen. So, for example, in my school, once people left those doors, for the majority of them, the language was going to be English. When they went into stores, when they went into other places, the language was going to be English. So if we were going to have an imbalance of any kind, it needed to be more Spanish than English. So that was kind of how we judged the balance. And in terms of whether it can work for adults, I think that yes, it can work for adults, but you then have to change the way that you teach and the content of what you're doing to match adult learning. I mean, what we were doing was for kids, and we were teaching content that they had to learn in schools, standards that they had to learn in schools. But if you're working with adults, I think you can do the same thing, but you just have to, again, change your approaches to align with adult learning, and recognize that there are some pretty embedded and ingrained, their language is more developed in their first language than it might be in a child as well. So it's not that you're undoing, because everything that you know in your first language, you can transfer into another, but you just need to really sort of help make those connections, probably more than you would make those direct connections than you would maybe with a child. Misha, do you have any comments on that?
I do. Of course, yeah. I do. I think the main problem is adults don't have to work, and they don't have the kind of time that a younger school age child has, where their work is from 7:30 in the morning to 3:30 to be learning and in school. So that's, to me, the biggest difference. That's that critical period hypothesis. It's why I try to debunk the generalized myth that children are just always naturally better learners. It's so much more complicated than that. It really also has to do so much with about time and expectation, but time on task. And so I've recently become very, very fond of methods for adult learners that are often called TPRS, or teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, or comprehensible input. Occasionally we have the good fortune of having Dr. Robert Patrick teach those methods with us. He works in a high school setting. It works very well with foreign language learners and with adult learners with very little time. It's an incredibly successful, effective way to jumpstart rich, meaningful learning so that adults have more to go forward with. But there's no replacement for just having time, reading, finding ways to have entry points for adults to have reading materials that are accessible to them. My favorite way is Netflix subtitled programs once you have a baseline of fluency. But anyway, yeah, so many things, but you can't expect adults to go to bilingual school. However, that Middlebury program in Vermont, at that Middlebury University program, that's what it's all about, is deep immersion. And as Stephen Krashen and so many others say, bilingual education, if you meet any fluent, bilingual, multilingual, translingual person, even if they didn't attend an official bilingual program, they had what is often referred to as de facto bilingual education. They had exposure to literacy. They had scaffolded, comprehensible input. They had it through other means, maybe informal schooling or family, or, but these things happen for anyone who's successful in learning more than one language. I had people say, well, can I learn, what do you think of, what's that famous Rose program that everybody buys? What's that?
Rosetta Stone?
Rosetta Stone. Does Rosetta Stone work? Oh, it's like so offensive to me. Usually I'm like, no, it's terrible. I meet this kid in Mexico at the Mexican TESOL conference. He is fluent in English and French all through Rosetta Stone. He said, but his motivation was so high. He did a lot of other things other than Rosetta Stone, but for him, that was the passing threshold. So it's like, it's like you said, it just depends. Yeah. Other things we've 8 minutes. Get it out, you guys. What are you thinking?
I have a question.
Yeah.
But it's not like, it's just a curiosity question since I've lived in Georgia my whole life. All right. So you got Flagship County and Comeback County. I know what Comeback County is because I know where the school is because I Googled it. But so Flagship, I'm assuming we just shift the vowel to a U and we're good?
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Cool. Sort of. One of the vowels.
Okay. I think so. Misha, can I say it at this point? Can I? Fulton County.
Yeah, that was my guess.
All right.
Just because it's Atlanta, but I was curious.
Yeah. I did my teaching in Fulton County when I was there. I taught ESL, sheltered English in middle school in South Fulton County when I was in Atlanta.
We usually make students do that unless they have express permission from everybody in a district that it's okay. Because of litigation and legal, they could always charge you with libel, or it's like a way to protect identities, but it's so often silly, but for anyone outside of Georgia, or but not most people wouldn't put that together.
No, I was just going along. I was like, these counties do not exist in this state. I know.
It wouldn't be hard to figure it out. Like you said, where one of the schools is now. And so it's not hard to figure out. Then you just go one county up and there's the other one. So there you go.
Well, I don't want to keep anybody. If you have, raise your do this or like do this, if you have, something on your mind. so we know, but otherwise this is just informal and go, think just how about a big round of, yes, exactly, applause and ASL applause or whatever for Dr. Giles. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
I'll be here next year, same time, same place, whatever you need.
Oh, we're so lucky. We're so lucky.
I keep waiting for the day that I'm going to have forgotten everything. And so I don't know, I take my memory pills and all, things to keep my brain going good. But until that day, then you got me.
Yeah, at least we have the dissertation.
That's right. You've got the dissertation and you've got these 2 years of recordings now. Yes. So exactly. When that happens.
Somewhere, I think Abdu maybe asked, I can't remember who it was, that asked if they could see what it looks like, what bilingual teaching looks like. And I do have I have an old blog, and under a passcode hidden, I put recordings that I made at your school. And I put it under password protected because I didn't know, but now it's so old, the kids don't look anything like themselves. But anyways, I can share probably those videos, but there are better videos. I looked up, I think I may have shared with several of you that I was searching in our UGA libraries. Now we have so much incredible access to things. We have this whole media library that we can just put in a keyword like bilingual education, and all the films that the UGA library has purchased or PBS NewsHour specials or whatever come up. And that's when I came across one about the Cherokee language revitalization. Is it Claire? Who is going to take me up on that? I can't remember. Maybe it was Hannah. Somebody said they were going to take me up on it. Hannah? Okay. I knew it was somebody. I was like, there's someone who's going to do that, who studied Cherokee. She couldn't be here tonight. She's teaching, but anyway, there's several episodes of different programs where you can see French bilingual education. And I think for Evie, I told you about that Nice White Parents podcast. Have you heard that, Dell? It's so, wow. It's an NPR special that looks at New York City's, it's a 10-part series that is basically the other counter story of elite efforts at bilingual education that really undermined a lot of effectiveness and democratizing, and made more problems maybe than help. It's interesting the way language was pitched and used as to further privilege, I would say, is the insight.
I wonder if that's what I was trying to say with what's going on in Texas, like with the I wonder if that has any.
I think you'll like
any
it.
Parallels.
Yeah,
right
Nice White Parents. It's very, very, very good. But I'm a podcast junkie, so. Anyways, well, I will hang out. I want to just touch base with Dell so we can hang out, but just for a second, I know you probably have things to do too, but it's so nice to see you synchronously. You're doing great work. I can't wait to see your presentations. I always learn next time they're doing their multilingual presentations. We've got Morocco, multilingualism, Belgium, I believe. And Angie, what is your group? And Sarah, which Spanish speaking? I know it was Spanish.
Doing Spanish Quechua bilingualism.
Oh, yes, because you're in Latin American or in Laxi. So yay. So we have 3 groups with 3 different worldly places.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I am going to go. I haven't had my supper yet. And I hear my son. I think my husband fed him, but I'm not 100% sure. So I need to go and check on that too.
Thank you so much. I'll touch base with you sometime. I'm going to be in Texas in December.
Oh, where?
Yeah. I've been.
It's a big state.
In Albuquerque.
That's New Mexico.
Oh wait, that's New Mexico. Oh, I might be in El Paso.
That's
Is El Paso
really far.
close to you? Okay. Yeah. Well, poo.
Are you going to be at UTEP or doing something at University of Texas El Paso?
invitations to UT Austin, which is closer to you or no?
Oh yeah, we're like
Okay.
Austin.
I'm supposed to have something on the horizon there. So
Okay.
Kind of cool.
I got a room for you.
Oh, good. Awesome. Good.
All right. It was lovely visiting with you all. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Good night. Good night.